The blood-red sun cast long shadows across Cody, Wyoming, as Zelda Kincaid stumbled from her father's wagon, her wrists bound with coarse rope that bit into her skin. The year was 1878, and at 20 years old, she never imagined her father would bring her to Holloway's trading post with the intention of selling her like cattle. "She's cursed, I tell you," Elijah Kincaid announced to the small crowd of onlookers, his voice carrying across the dusty yard. "Brings nothing but misfortune to anyone fool enough to keep her." Zelda kept her eyes downcast, shame burning her cheeks even as anger smoldered in her heart. Ever since her mother died in childbirth 3 years prior, her father had become convinced that Zelda carried a curse. The drought that killed their crops, the illness that took their livestock, even the fire that burned half their barn, all blamed on her supposed curse. "How much you asking for her?" someone called out. $50, her father replied, "and you'll be taking the curse with her." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Zelda bit her lip, fighting back tears. The humiliation was unbearable. She'd spent years caring for her father, cooking his meals, mending his clothes, working the fields alongside him from dawn until dusk. And this was how he repaid her loyalty. "I'll give you 25, a gruff voice called. Zelda looked up to see a weathered man with yellowed teeth and hands that trembled slightly, the telltale sign of a man who spent too much time with a whiskey bottle. 30, another voice countered. Her stomach churned. Was this really happening? Being sold to the highest bidder like a piece of furniture, $50. A hush fell over the crowd as a tall figure pushed through, spurs jingling with each confident stride. Zelda's gaze traveled upward, worn leather boots, dust-covered denim, a holstered Colt revolver, broad shoulders beneath a dark blue shirt, and finally to a face partially shaded by a wide-brimmed hat. The stranger stepped forward, and Zelda could now see his features clearly: strong jaw darkened with stubble, straight nose, and eyes the color of a summer storm. He wasn't handsome in the conventional sense, but there was something magnetic about him, something dangerous. $50 for the girl and her curse, the man repeated, his voice deep and steady. Her father's eyes widened. "You're a fool to pay full price when you know what she is." The stranger's lips curved into a slight smile. "Then I want this curse." The crowd murmured as the man reached into his vest and pulled out a leather pouch, counting out the coins and placing them in her father's eager palm. "She's yours then," her father said, already turning away. "Good riddance to you both." The stranger cut the rope binding her wrists and nodded toward a bay horse tethered nearby. "Can you ride?" Zelda swallowed hard, rubbing her chafed wrists. "Yes, then let's go." He started walking, clearly expecting her to follow. "Wait," she called after him. "Who are you?" He paused, turning slightly. "Beau Abernathy. Where are you taking me, away from here?" His gaze shifted to her father, who was already spending her price on whiskey at the trading post. "Unless you'd rather stay." Zelda shook her head and hurried to follow him. As they mounted their horses, her on a chestnut mare he'd apparently brought for this purpose, she couldn't help but ask, "Why did you buy me?" Beau adjusted his hat, his expression unreadable. "Let's just say I have my reasons for wanting a curse." They rode out of town as the sun began to set, heading north along the winding trail that followed the Shoshone River. The vast Wyoming landscape stretched around them, rolling plains giving way to distant mountains, the air growing cooler as twilight descended. Zelda studied her rescuer or new owner. She wasn't quite sure which from the corner of her eye. Beau Abernathy sat tall in the saddle, his posture suggesting years of riding. A rifle was secured to his saddle, and the way his eyes constantly scanned their surroundings spoke of a man accustomed to watching for danger. "Are you a bounty hunter?" she asked, breaking the silence that had stretched between them. "No." His answer was clipped. An outlaw, then. This earned her a brief glance. Do I look like an outlaw to you? She shrugged. What kind of man buys a woman he believes is cursed? I never said I believed in the curse. Then why pay $50 for me? Beau was quiet for so long that Zelda thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than before. I knew your mother, Rose. Zelda nearly fell from her horse in shock. You knew my mother, he nodded, his gaze fixed on the trail ahead. Before she married your father, we were friends. There was something in the way he said friends that made Zelda wonder if there had been more between them. A pang of something curiosity, perhaps even jealousy, flared within her. When I heard Elijah Kincaid was selling his daughter, claiming she was cursed, I knew I had to intervene. His jaw tightened. Your father was never a good man, even before Rose died. They continued riding until the landscape grew too dark to navigate safely. Beau led them to a small clearing near the river, where he efficiently set up camp. He built a fire, prepared a simple meal of beans and jerky, and laid out bedrolls on opposite sides of the flames. As they sat eating, Zelda studied him across the fire. Where are we going? I have a ranch about a day's ride from here, he replied. It's not much, but it's a place to start over. And what will I be there? Your servant? She hesitated, heat rising to her cheeks. Beau's expression hardened. You'll be a free woman, Miss Kincaid. I bought you to give you your freedom, not to own you. Zelda blinked in surprise. Then why say you wanted the curse? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. It seemed the fastest way to end that spectacle. Besides, I figured a curse might keep unwanted visitors away from my land. Despite everything, Zelda found herself smiling. That's the first sensible thing I've heard all day. As the night deepened around them, Zelda lay on her bedroll, staring up at the stars. For the first time in years, she felt a flicker of hope. Whatever Beau Abernathy's true motives might be, they couldn't be worse than the life she was leaving behind. Morning came with a chill in the air and dew coating their bedrolls. Beau was already awake, brewing coffee over a small fire when Zelda opened her eyes. We should reach the ranch by nightfall, he said, handing her a tin cup of strong black coffee. Zelda accepted it gratefully, the warmth seeping into her cold fingers. What will I do at your ranch? Whatever you want, he replied. You can stay as long as you need to figure out your next step. They broke camp quickly and continued their journey north, the terrain gradually changing as they traveled. The plains gave way to more rugged landscape, with stands of pine trees and rocky outcroppings. By midday, they had entered a valley sheltered by low mountains, the land greener here than in the flats around Cody. It's beautiful, Zelda remarked as they paused to rest the horses by a clear running stream. It is, Beau agreed, his expression softening as he surveyed the land. This valley has good water, decent grazing. The winters are hard, but we manage. My foreman Miguel and a couple of ranch hands. It's a small operation. Zelda dipped her hands into the cool water of the stream, splashing her face. What do you raise? Horses, mostly. Some cattle. He glanced at her. Do you know much about horses? She nodded. I've worked with them all my life. My father kept a few for plowing and transportation. Good. We can always use another hand who knows horses. As they remounted and continued their journey, Zelda felt a strange sense of anticipation building within her. This man, this mysterious Beau Abernathy, who had known her mother, was offering her something she'd never really had. A choice. They reached the ranch as dusk was falling, the golden light of sunset illuminating a modest but well-maintained homestead. The main house was built of sturdy logs with a stone chimney, flanked by a large barn and several smaller outbuildings. A corral held about a dozen horses, and in the distance she could see cattle grazing in the valley. As they approached, A man emerged from the barn, older, with a weathered face and silver-streaked black hair. He raised a hand in greeting. "That's Miguel," Beau explained, returning the gesture. "Been with me since I started this place." They dismounted in the yard and Miguel came forward, curiosity evident in his expression as he took in Zelda's presence. "Miguel, this is Zelda Kincaid," Beau said. "She'll be staying with us for a while." Miguel nodded politely. "Welcome to Abernathy Ranch, Miss Kincaid." "Thank you," she replied, suddenly conscious of her dirty dress and tangled hair. "There's a room ready in the house," Beau told her. "Miguel's wife, Elena, left some clothing that might fit you. She's in town visiting their daughter, but she'll be back in a few days." Zelda felt overwhelmed by the kindness. "I don't know how to thank you." "No need," Beau said, his voice gruff. "Go get settled. We'll talk more in the morning." The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a chest of drawers, and a window overlooking the valley. True to Beau's word, several dresses and other necessities had been laid out for her. After washing with water from the pitcher and basin, Zelda changed into a simple blue dress that was only slightly too large. She made her way to the main room of the house, where Beau was setting out a simple supper of stew and bread. "Miguel's wife is the cook around here," he explained, somewhat apologetically. "My efforts are edible, but not much more." They ate in companionable silence for a while before Zelda worked up the courage to ask the question that had been burning in her mind. "How did you know my mother?" Beau set down his spoon, his expression guarded. "We grew up in the same town back east. Your mother and I, we were close once." "Were you in love with her?" The directness of her question seemed to surprise him, but he answered honestly. "Yes, but her father had other plans. He arranged her marriage to Elijah Kincaid, who had land and prospects out west." Zelda tried to imagine her stern, bitter father as a young man with promise. It was difficult. "I was going to ask her to run away with me," Beau continued, his voice quiet, "but I was too late. By the time I'd saved enough money, she was already married and headed west." He looked up, meeting Zelda's gaze. "I didn't see her again until 5 years ago when I happened to be passing through Cody. She was in town with a young girl I suppose." 5 years ago, Zelda tried to remember. "That would have been just before my 15th birthday. We went to town for supplies." Beau nodded. "She recognized me immediately. We only spoke briefly, but she seemed tired, unhappy." "She was," Zelda confirmed, pain lancing through her at the memory of her mother's quiet suffering. "Father was never kind to her. After I was born, he blamed her for not giving him sons." "I should have taken you both away then," Beau said, a flash of anger crossing his features. "She wouldn't have gone," Zelda said softly. "She believed in honoring her vows no matter the cost." They finished their meal in silence, each lost in thoughts of Rose Kincaid. Later, as Zelda lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, she wondered about the strange twist of fate that had brought her to the home of the man who had loved her mother. The next morning dawned clear and cool. Zelda rose early, dressed in one of the borrowed dresses, and made her way to the kitchen. Finding it empty, she took the initiative to start breakfast. By the time Beau came in from the morning chores, she had coffee brewing and biscuits in the oven. "You didn't have to do that," he said, hanging his hat on a peg by the door. "I want to earn my keep," she replied. "I'm not one to sit idle." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Fair enough. After breakfast, I can show you around the ranch if you'd like." The tour took most of the morning. Beau Abernathy's operation was modest but impressive: 20 acres of good grazing land, a small apple orchard, a kitchen garden currently lying fallow, and about 40 head of cattle. But the heart of the ranch was clearly the horses: 15 magnificent animals of mixed breeding, but all showing quality and careful handling. "They're beautiful," Zelda said, reaching over a fence to stroke the velvet nose of a bay mare. "That's Copper," Beau told her. "Best cutting horse I've ever trained. Her foal is over there, the chestnut with the blaze." As they walked among the corrals, Beau explained his business. "I breed and train horses for specific purposes: cattle work, transportation, even a few for racing. It's not a fortune, but it's a good living." "And you do this all with just Miguel and a couple of ranch hands. And now you, if you're interested in the work." Zelda didn't hesitate. "I am." The next few weeks fell into a rhythm that felt strangely comfortable. Zelda woke early each morning, helped with breakfast, then joined the men for the day's work. She proved her worth quickly, displaying a natural way with the horses and a willingness to tackle any task, no matter how difficult or dirty. Elena, Miguel's wife, returned from town and took Zelda under her wing, teaching her the routines of the ranch house and sharing stories of her 30 years in Wyoming territory. The older woman was kind but straightforward, and Zelda found herself growing fond of both Elena and Miguel. The two ranch hands brothers, named Tom and Jack Wilson, were initially wary of her, especially after Beau explained that some believed her to be cursed. But when no disasters befell the ranch in the weeks following her arrival, they relaxed, eventually treating her with the same respectful camaraderie they showed each other. As for Beau, he remained something of a mystery. He worked alongside his men, never asking them to do anything he wouldn't do himself. He was fair, competent, and occasionally even showed flashes of dry humor. But he kept a certain distance, especially from Zelda. One evening, about a month after her arrival, Zelda found herself alone with Beau on the porch. The summer night was warm, with fireflies blinking in the darkness and the distant howl of a coyote echoing across the valley. "Thank you," she said quietly. He glanced at her, one eyebrow raised. "For what?" "For everything. For saving me from my father, for giving me a place here, for—" She hesitated, "For not believing I'm cursed." Beau was silent for a long moment. "Your father is a fool," he finally said, blaming his misfortune on a young woman rather than his own failings. "He wasn't always like that," Zelda said, feeling compelled to offer some defense of the man who had raised her. "After Mother died, something in him broke. Grief can change a person," Beau acknowledged, "but it doesn't excuse cruelty." They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars emerge in the deepening twilight. Finally, Zelda asked the question that had been on her mind since their first night at the ranch. "Why did you never marry? After my mother, I mean." Beau's expression remained neutral, but she noticed his fingers tighten slightly on the arm of his chair. "Never found the right woman, I suppose, or never stopped loving the wrong one." His eyes met hers, surprise evident in their depths. Then something like respect flickered across his features. "You're very direct, Miss Kincaid." "Life's too short for dancing around the truth," she replied. "And please call me Zelda. After all, you've seen me mucking out stalls and wrestling calves." A small smile tugged at his lips. "Zelda, then." The summer days lengthened, filled with hard work and small pleasures. Zelda found herself enjoying the sense of purpose that came with contributing to the ranch. She took particular satisfaction in working with the horses, especially a spirited young filly that Beau had almost given up on. "You have a gift," he told her one afternoon as they watched the filly trot obediently around the corral, responding to Zelda's gentle commands. "She wouldn't let anyone near her before you came." "She just needed patience," Zelda replied, but she couldn't hide the pride in her voice. As August turned to September, the ranch began preparations for winter. Hay was cut and stored, preserves were put up, repairs were made to buildings, and plans were laid for which animals would be kept through the cold months and which would be sold at the autumn markets. It was during this busy time that trouble arrived in the form of a letter delivered by a passing freight driver. Beau read it with a deepening frown, then disappeared into his study for the rest of the evening. The next morning, he asked Zelda to join him for a ride to check the north fencing. Once they were well away from the ranch house, he pulled his horse to a stop beside a small creek. "I received news yesterday that your father is looking for you." Zelda felt as though she'd been doused with ice water. "Why, he sold me. He has no right, apparently. He's claiming I kidnapped you. Says he was drunk when I took you and never agreed to any sale." "That's a lie." Anger surged through her. "There were witnesses. The whole town saw him take your money." "I know." Beau dismounted and helped her down from her horse. They walked along the creek bank, the rushing water partially drowning their conversation from any potential eavesdroppers, not that there were likely to be any this far from the ranch. "But he's stirring up trouble in Cody, saying I bewitched him. Playing on those old superstitions about you being cursed." Zelda stopped walking, suddenly afraid. "Will people believe him?" Beau shrugged. "Some might. People love a good story, especially one with curses and deception, but that's not what concerns me." "What then?" "He's gotten the attention of a man named Vernon Blackwell. He owns most of the businesses in Cody and has been trying to buy my land for years. This gives him the perfect excuse to cause trouble for me." Zelda felt sick. "This is my fault. I should leave, go somewhere else." "No." Beau's voice was firm. "You're not at fault and you're not going anywhere unless you want to." "But what can we do?" Beau's expression was grim. "We're going to Cody to set the record straight, and then we're going to make sure your father can never threaten you again." They returned to the ranch to prepare for the journey. Elena helped Zelda pack while Beau spoke with Miguel, leaving him in charge during their absence. "How long will you be gone?" Elena asked as she folded a dress into Zelda's small bag. "I don't know," Zelda admitted. "It depends on how quickly we can resolve this." Elena gave her a knowing look. "Be careful in town, Nina. Not everyone will be pleased to see you return, especially with Beau." Zelda frowned. "What do you mean?" "There are those who have had their eye on him for years," the older woman explained. "Single women hoping to catch his attention. They won't like seeing him arrive with a beautiful young woman at his side." Zelda felt her cheeks flush. "It's not like that between us." Elena merely smiled. "Perhaps not yet." The journey to Cody took a full day of hard riding. They arrived as dusk was falling, the town's windows beginning to glow with lamplight. Beau led them to a small hotel at the edge of town, away from the saloons and more raucous establishments. "We'll get rooms for the night," he said as they dismounted. "Tomorrow we'll go to the sheriff's office and sort this out." The hotel was clean if basic, run by a stern-faced woman who raised her eyebrows at the sight of them but asked no questions as she took Beau's money and handed over 2-room keys. "Get some rest," Beau told Zelda as they stood in the narrow hallway between their rooms. "Tomorrow may be difficult." Zelda nodded, suddenly exhausted from the long ride and the anxiety of returning to the town she'd fled. "Beau," she said as he turned to enter his room. "Thank you for standing by me." He paused, his expression softening. "I made a promise to myself the day I bought you from your father. I promised I wouldn't fail Rose's daughter the way I failed her." Before she could respond, he entered his room and closed the door, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Morning came too quickly. After a simple breakfast in the hotel's small dining room, they made their way to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Mills was a heavy-set man with a bushy mustache and tired eyes. He listened impassively as Beau explained the situation. "I've heard Kincaid's side of this story," the sheriff said when Beau had finished. "He claims you took advantage of him while he was in his cups, spirited away his only daughter using some kind of trickery." "That's not true," Zelda interjected. My father was sober when he brought me to town with the explicit purpose of selling me. He claimed I was cursed and wanted to be rid of me. Sheriff Mills studied her for a long moment. I remember that day, quite a spectacle at Holloway's. Then you know I'm telling the truth, Beau said. The sheriff sighed heavily. What I know is that I've got a messy situation on my hands. Kincaid's been drinking even more heavily since you left, miss. And he's found an ally in Vernon Blackwell, who's been looking for any excuse to cause trouble for Abernathy here. My father has no right to interfere in my life, Zelda said firmly. I'm 20 years old, and even if there had been no sale, I would be free to leave his home. That's true enough, Sheriff Mills agreed. But Kincaid is claiming there was more to it, that Abernathy has immoral designs on you, that he's keeping you against your will. Zelda felt her temper flare. That's absurd. Beau has been nothing but respectful. He's given me honest work and a safe place to live. The sheriff held up a placating hand. I believe you, Miss Kincaid, but the accusations have been made and I need to address them formally. He turned to Beau. I'll need statements from both of you, and then we'll need to confront Kincaid directly. They spent the next hour providing detailed accounts of the sale and Zelda's subsequent residence at Abernathy Ranch. When they had finished, Sheriff Mills nodded thoughtfully. Kincaid usually spends his afternoons at the Rusty Nail Saloon. We'll find him there. As they walked down Cody's Main Street toward the saloon district, Zelda felt the stares of townspeople. Some looked curious, others hostile. She recognized several faces from the day of her sale, including Mr. Holloway himself, who quickly looked away when she met his gaze. The Rusty Nail Saloon was already busy despite the early hour. The acrid smell of cheap whiskey and unwashed bodies assaulted them as they entered, and several conversations halted abruptly at the sight of them. Elijah Kincaid sat at a corner table, a half-empty bottle before him. He looked even more haggard than Zelda remembered, his clothes dirty and his beard untrimmed. When he spotted them, his bloodshot eyes narrowed with malice. There she is, he shouted, pushing unsteadily to his feet. My cursed daughter and the devil who stole her. Sheriff Mills moved forward, his hand resting casually on his holstered pistol. Sit down, Kincaid, we need to talk. Nothing to talk about, her father slurred. He took her when I wasn't in my right mind. I want her back. No. The word came from Zelda, clear and strong. She stepped forward, facing the man who had caused her so much pain. You sold me. You took $50 and called it good riddance. You don't get to change your mind now. Her father's face contorted with rage. Ungrateful witch, after all I did for you, all you did. Zelda laughed, a sound with no humor in it. You worked me like a slave, blamed me for Mother's death, for every misfortune that befell us. You made my life a living hell, and then you sold me like an animal. The saloon had gone completely silent, every eye fixed on the confrontation. Is this true, Kincaid? Sheriff Mills asked, his voice hard. Did you sell your daughter? She's lying, her father insisted, but his eyes shifted away. There were at least a dozen witnesses, Beau said quietly, including Mr. Holloway, who I believe is a friend of yours, Sheriff. Mills nodded slowly. I've already spoken to some of them. They confirm Miss Kincaid's account. Her father's face flushed dark with anger. Vernon will hear about this. He promised to help me. Vernon Blackwell has no authority here, the sheriff cut in. And if he's been encouraging you to make false accusations, he'll answer for it. They're not false, Kincaid shouted. She's cursed. Everything she touches turns to ruin. The only curse in her life was you, Beau said, stepping forward. His voice was quiet but carried through the hushed saloon. You sold your daughter. She's no longer your concern. If you approach her again, if you spread any more lies about her or about me, you'll regret it. There was nothing overtly threatening in his words, but something in his tone made even the sheriff glance at him sharply. "I think we're done here," Mills said after a moment. "Miss Kincaid is clearly with Mr. Abernathy of her own free will. The sale, while distasteful, was legal. This matter is closed." As they turned to leave, a new voice spoke from the doorway. "Not quite closed, I think." The man who entered was expensively dressed, his tailored suit and gold watch chain marking him as someone of means. Though Zelda had never seen him before, she knew instinctively that this must be Vernon Blackwell. "Mr. Blackwell," Sheriff Mills acknowledged with a slight nod. "This doesn't concern you." "On the contrary," Blackwell replied smoothly. "Mr. Kincaid came to me for help in recovering his daughter. I promised to assist him." His gaze swept over Zelda, assessing and somehow unclean. "I see now why Abernathy was so eager to rescue her." Beau's posture stiffened, but his voice remained even. "As the sheriff has determined, Miss Kincaid is under my protection legally and with her full consent. Your assistance is neither required nor welcome." Blackwell smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. "Such chivalry! One might almost believe your motives were pure." He turned to Zelda. "My dear, if you're being held against your will, or if Abernathy has made any improper advances, you need only say the word." "The only improper advances I'm concerned about are the ones you're making right now," Zelda replied coolly. "I am exactly where I want to be." Several men in the saloon chuckled at her retort, and Blackwell's smile tightened. "Very well, but know that my offer stands. Should you change your mind, you'll find me more generous than Abernathy." He turned to leave but paused to add, "and considerably more influential in this town." After Blackwell departed, Sheriff Mills insisted on accompanying them back to their hotel. "He's not a man who takes defeat gracefully," the sheriff warned. "Be on your guard while you're in Cody." That evening, as they sat in the hotel's small dining room eating a plain but satisfying supper, Zelda finally asked the question that had been on her mind since their confrontation at the saloon. "Why does Vernon Blackwell care so much about my father's claims? What does he gain by interfering?" Beau set down his fork, his expression thoughtful. "It's not about your father. It's about my land. Blackwell has been buying up property all along the Shoshone River. My ranch sits at a critical junction where two tributaries meet. He's made offers before, but I've always refused to sell. And now he thinks he can use me to pressure you, or to discredit me. If he can spread rumors that I stole you for immoral purposes, it might turn public opinion against me, make it harder for me to do business in Cody." Zelda pushed her plate away, her appetite gone. "I'm still causing you trouble, even after you rescued me." Beau reached across the table, hesitating briefly before covering her hand with his. "You're not causing anything. Blackwell is the problem, not you." His touch sent a strange flutter through her chest. For a moment, they sat in silence, his hand warm over hers. The next morning they prepared to leave Cody, both eager to return to the peace of the ranch. As they saddled their horses behind the hotel, the sound of approaching footsteps made them turn. Zelda's father stood there, swaying slightly, his expression a mixture of anger and desperation. "What do you want?" Beau asked, moving subtly to place himself between Zelda and her father. "Need to talk to my daughter," Kincaid mumbled. "Alone." "Anything you have to say to me, you can say in front of Beau," Zelda replied firmly. Her father's bloodshot eyes darted between them. "You think you're better than me now. Living with him, doing God knows what, that's enough," Beau cut in, his voice hard. "Say what you came to say or leave." Kincaid seemed to deflate, his shoulders sagging. "I need money. The farm's gone. Bank took it. Nowhere to go." Zelda felt a complex surge of emotions, pity, anger, a lingering sense of daughterly obligation despite everything. Where will you go? Denver, maybe. Got a cousin there. He looked at her directly for the first time. I know I got no right to ask, but I need help. Before Zelda could respond, Beau reached into his vest pocket and pulled out some bills. There's $50. The exact amount I paid for your daughter. Consider it a loan to get you to Denver. Kincaid's eyes widened at the sight of the money. He reached for it, but Beau held it just out of reach. On one condition, Beau continued. You leave Cody today and you never contact Zelda again unless she chooses to reach out to you. Her father nodded eagerly. Yes, fine, I'll go. Beau handed over the money. The morning stage leaves in an hour. I suggest you be on it. Without another word to Zelda, her father clutched the bills and hurried away, presumably toward the stage office. You didn't have to do that, Zelda said softly. Yes, I did. Beau finished securing his saddlebags. As long as he was desperate and in Cody, he was a weapon Blackwell could use against us. Now he'll be gone. Do you think that will be the end of it? Beau's expression was grim. I doubt it. Blackwell isn't the type to give up easily. But at least we've eliminated one problem. They rode out of Cody as the morning sun burned away the mist hanging over the town. Neither spoke much during the journey back to the ranch, each lost in their own thoughts. That evening, as they approached the familiar buildings of Abernathy Ranch, Zelda felt a surprising sense of homecoming. In just a few months, this place had come to mean more to her than the farm where she'd spent her entire life. Miguel greeted them with obvious relief. All is well here, he reported. Though there was a stranger asking questions yesterday, Beau frowned. What kind of questions? About you and the señorita? How long she had been here, what was her position on the ranch? I told him nothing important. What did he look like? Zelda asked, a knot forming in her stomach. Miguel described a well-dressed man with a city accent, almost certainly one of Blackwell's men. He's having us watched, Beau said later as they sat on the porch after supper. Gathering information. For what purpose? I don't know yet. But we should be prepared for more trouble. Trouble came sooner than expected. 3 days after their return from Cody, a rider arrived with a letter bearing Vernon Blackwell's ornate seal. Beau read it in silence, his expression darkening. What does it say? Zelda asked when he finally looked up. He's offering to buy the ranch again, double the market value. Beau handed her the letter. Read the last paragraph. Zelda scanned the elegant handwriting until she reached the section Beau indicated. I understand your reluctance to part with property that has been your home for so many years. However, I feel compelled to point out that your current domestic arrangement housing an unmarried young woman of questionable reputation may soon become a matter of public concern. While I personally have no interest in such gossip, others might not be so discreet. A fresh start elsewhere might be advantageous for all parties involved. He's threatening to ruin my reputation to pressure you into selling, Zelda said, anger making her voice shake. Using me as leverage. Beau took the letter back, folding it carefully. It won't work. I don't care about gossip, but it could hurt your business. If people believe there's something inappropriate between us, they might not want to deal with you. Let them think what they want. Beau's jaw was set stubbornly. I'm not selling and I'm not sending you away. Zelda studied him, wondering at his determination. Why is this land so important to you? He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the distant mountains. When your mother married your father and moved west, I followed. Not immediately, it took me nearly a year to settle my affairs back east. By the time I arrived in Wyoming territory, they had already established their farm near Cody. You came all this way for her? Zelda asked, surprised. Beau nodded. I didn't intend to interfere in her marriage. I just needed to be near her to know she was all right. I bought this land, started building a life here. For 15 years I lived less than a day's ride from your mother without ever speaking to her. Until 5 years ago when you saw her in town. Yes." His voice softened with the memory. She had changed, grown older, of course, but there was something diminished in her. The spark I remembered was nearly gone. Zelda thought of her mother's quiet resignation in those last years, the way she had seemed to fade a little more each day. She was unhappy. She told me as much in the few minutes we had to speak. She said if things had been different. He trailed off, then continued more firmly. But she was committed to her vows to you. She wouldn't leave, even when I offered to help her. So this land connects you to her, Zelda realized. To those years of waiting, hoping. Yes, he met her eyes directly. I won't sell it, not for any price. In that moment, looking at the fierce determination in his face, Zelda felt something shift inside her. The gratitude and respect she developed for this man over the past months deepened into something warmer, more complex. Then we'll fight, she said simply. Whatever Blackwell tries next, we'll face it together. The weeks that followed were tense but uneventful. Blackwell sent 2 more letters, each offering more money for the ranch, each containing veiled threats about Zelda's presence there. Beau ignored them all. October brought the first frost, painting the valley with crimson and gold as the trees turned. The ranch was busy with final preparations for winter, storing the last of the harvest, bringing the cattle down from the high summer pastures, ensuring that buildings were weathertight. Zelda threw herself into the work, finding satisfaction in physical labor and in learning new skills. Alina taught her to make soap and candles. Miguel showed her how to repair tack, and Beau, increasingly less reserved around her, instructed her in the finer points of horse training. It was during one such lesson, as they worked with a promising 2-year-old colt in the round corral, that Beau suddenly stiffened, his attention caught by something beyond the fence. "Riders coming," he said, his voice tense. "4 of them." Zelda followed his gaze to see 4 horsemen approaching the ranch house at a steady pace. Even at a distance, she could tell these weren't ordinary visitors. They rode with the confident posture of men accustomed to intimidation. "Go to the house," Beau told her. "Tell Miguel to bring my rifle." "I'm not hiding," Zelda replied firmly. "Whatever this is, I'm part of it." He looked as though he might argue, but instead gave a short nod. They exited the corral together, walking side by side toward the approaching riders. The men reined in their horses in the yard, forming a loose semicircle facing Beau and Zelda. The leader, a hard-faced man with a drooping mustache, tipped his hat with mock politeness. "Mr. Abernathy, Miss Kincaid, Mr. Blackwell sends his regards. What do you want, Parker?" Beau asked, his voice level but with an undercurrent of tension. The man named Parker smiled unpleasantly. "Just delivering a message. Mr. Blackwell wants you to reconsider his generous offer for this property." "My answer hasn't changed. The ranch isn't for sale." Parker's smile faded. "Mr. Blackwell thought you might say that. He asked me to provide you with additional incentive to change your mind." At some signal Zelda didn't catch, the 3 other men dismounted and spread out slightly, hands hovering near their holstered weapons. Miguel emerged from the barn, Beau's rifle in his hands, and moved to stand beside them. Tom and Jack Wilson appeared from the direction of the bunkhouse, similarly armed. Parker surveyed the scene, his expression calculating. Now, there's no need for this to get ugly. Mr. Blackwell is a reasonable man. He's offering good money for this land. And if I still refuse, Beau asked, then things might get difficult." Parker's gaze shifted to Zelda. "For everyone involved, it would be a shame if rumors about the cursed Kincaid girl started spreading again. Or if something unfortunate happened to your horses or your cattle." Beau's expression hardened. Are you threatening us, Parker? Just explaining the reality of the situation. Parker adjusted his hat. Mr. Blackwell controls most of the business in this region. He can make it very hard for you to sell your horses or buy the supplies you need, and that's assuming nothing more direct occurs. Zelda felt cold anger wash through her. These men, this Blackwell, thought they could use her, use the ridiculous curse story to force Beau from his land. The land that connected him to her mother. Mr. Parker, she said, stepping forward, please convey a message to your employer. Parker looked surprised but nodded. Of course, miss. Tell him that if he continues to harass us, if he spreads any rumors about me or causes any harm to this ranch, I will personally ensure that every person from here to Cheyenne knows exactly what kind of man Vernon Blackwell is. I may be known as the cursed Kincaid girl, but he'll be known as the coward who hides behind hired thugs while threatening women. A muscle twitched in Parker's jaw. You should be careful who you insult, Miss Kincaid. And you should be careful whose land you trespass on, Beau cut in. You've delivered your message. Now leave. For a tense moment, Zelda thought Parker might order his men to attack, but after a calculating look at the armed ranch hands, he jerked his head in a signal to withdraw. This isn't over, Abernathy, he said as he turned his horse. Mr. Blackwell always gets what he wants, one way or another. They watched in silence as the four men rode away, dust rising from their horses' hooves. They'll be back, Miguel said grimly. With more men next time, Beau nodded. We'll be ready. He turned to Zelda, his expression a mixture of concern and something like pride. That was brave. Foolish, maybe, but brave. She managed a small smile. I'm tired of being used as a weapon against you. If Blackwell wants to fight, let him fight honorably. That night, after the others had retired, Zelda found Beau still awake, cleaning his rifle by the fire in the main room. You should get some rest, he said without looking up. Tomorrow will be a busy day. So should you. She sat in the chair opposite him. Beau, I've been thinking. Maybe I should leave just for a while. If I'm not here, Blackwell can't use me against you. Now he did look up, his expression sharp. Is that what you want, to leave? No, she admitted. But I don't want to be the reason you lose everything you've built here. You're not. He set the rifle aside, giving her his full attention. Blackwell wanted this land long before you arrived. He's using you as an excuse, not a reason. Even so, no. His voice was firm. Running won't solve anything. This is your home now if you want it to be. The simple declaration warmed her more than she expected. I do want it to be. I just don't know how to fight someone like Blackwell. We'll figure it out, Beau promised. Together. The threat of Blackwell's retaliation hung over the ranch like a storm cloud in the weeks that followed. Beau and Miguel organized regular patrols of the property, and no one went out alone. Despite these precautions, small incidents began to occur. A section of fence cut, allowing a dozen cattle to wander off. A watering trough found contaminated. A barn door left open during a rainstorm, soaking valuable feed. None of these acts caused serious damage, but they served as constant reminders of their vulnerability. Blackwell was sending a message. He could reach them whenever he chose. The situation came to a head in early November, when Beau rode to Cody to meet with a potential buyer for 2 of his trained horses. He returned late that evening, his expression grim. The buyer didn't show, he told Zelda as they sat at the kitchen table. When I asked around, I discovered that Blackwell had gotten to him first, convinced him that doing business with me would be unwise. He's trying to isolate us economically, Zelda realized, cut off our income. Beau nodded, his jaw tight. It won't work immediately. We have enough savings and supplies to last through winter. But by spring. He didn't need to finish the thought. Without the ability to sell horses or buy necessary supplies, the ranch would eventually fail. There must be something we can do, Zelda insisted. Some way to fight back. I've been thinking about that. Beau rubbed a hand over his face, looking tired. Blackwell's power comes from his money and his connections. We need to find a way to undermine one or both. Over the next few days, they developed a plan. Beau would ride to Laramie, where Blackwell had less influence, to sell his horses and make necessary purchases. Meanwhile, Zelda would return to Cody with Miguel to speak with Sheriff Mills and gather information on Blackwell's activities. Be careful, Beau told her as they prepared to part ways. Blackwell has eyes everywhere in Cody. I will, she promised. You be careful too. Their eyes held for a long moment. Then, in a gesture that surprised them both, Beau reached out and gently touched her cheek. I'll see you in a week. The touch lingered on her skin long after he had ridden away. In Cody, Zelda and Miguel took rooms at a different hotel than before, hoping to attract less attention. Their first stop was the sheriff's office, where Mills greeted them with obvious concern. I was wondering when one of you would show up, he said, ushering them into his private office. Things have been happening that you should know about. He told them that Blackwell had been systematically consolidating his power in the region, buying out smaller businesses and pressuring those he couldn't buy. He'd also been spreading rumors that Beau Abernathy was harboring a cursed woman, that strange occurrences had been reported at his ranch, that he was involved in illegal activities. Most folks don't believe the wild stories, Mills assured them, but Blackwell is powerful. People are afraid to cross him, even if they know he's lying. Is there nothing that can be done legally? Zelda asked. Surely some of this constitutes harassment. The sheriff spread his hands helplessly. Without proof of specific threats or actions, there's little I can do. Spreading rumors isn't illegal, unfortunately. What about the men he sent to threaten us? Miguel asked. Parker and the others. If you want to file a formal complaint, I'll investigate, Mills offered. But it would be your word against theirs, and Blackwell has judges in his pocket too. It was disheartening news, but not unexpected. As they left the sheriff's office, Zelda felt a renewed determination to find another way to counter Blackwell's influence. Their opportunity came from an unexpected source. While purchasing supplies at the general store, Zelda overheard a conversation between the shopkeeper, Mrs. Hanson, and another woman. Third time this month he's raised the rent, Mrs. Hanson was saying. If it goes up again, we'll have to close the store. 20 years in business, and Blackwell will end it with the stroke of a pen. He did the same to my Henry, the other woman replied. Doubled the fee for using the lumber yard. Said if he didn't like it, he could take his business elsewhere, knowing full well there is no elsewhere within 50 miles. Zelda approached them cautiously. Excuse me, but I couldn't help overhearing. You're having troubles with Vernon Blackwell, Mrs. Hanson eyed her suspiciously until recognition dawned. You're the Kincaid girl, the one they said was cursed. Zelda nodded, bracing herself for rejection, but Mrs. Hanson's expression softened. Always thought that was nonsense. Your mother was a good woman, used to come in here for fabric and such, had a kind word for everyone. She lowered her voice. What's your interest in Blackwell? He's trying to force Beau Abernathy, the man I live with now, off his ranch, Zelda explained, using threats and economic pressure. The two women exchanged knowing looks. He's doing the same all over the county, Mrs. Hanson said, driving people out, buying up everything. But why? Zelda asked. He already seems to control most of the businesses in town. Mrs. Hanson glanced around to ensure they weren't overheard. Railroads coming through next year. They're laying track from Laramie to the Northern Territories. Word is, They'll need a major stop somewhere in this region for supplies, maintenance, maybe even a junction. Understanding dawned. And whoever owns the land where they build that stop stands to make a fortune. Exactly. Blackwell's buying everything he can, especially properties along the Shoshone River. Your Mr. Abernathy's ranch would be prime location for a rail depot. This new information changed everything. It explained Blackwell's determination and his increasingly aggressive tactics. It also suggested a potential strategy. Over the next few days, Zelda and Miguel quietly met with other business owners and residents who had suffered from Blackwell's predatory practices. They found many who shared their grievances but few willing to stand openly against him. "He'll ruin us," was the common refrain. "We can't fight someone with his money and connections." By the end of the week, when Beau returned from Laramie, Zelda had developed a clearer picture of Blackwell's operations and a possible plan to counter them. "The railroad is key," she explained as they sat around the kitchen table at the ranch. "Blackwell is preparing for its arrival, buying up strategic properties." "Including this one," Beau nodded. "It makes sense now. This valley would be an ideal location for a depot-level ground, access to water, natural drainage. If we could somehow prevent him from controlling the railroad's route," Zelda continued, "we might be able to break his power, or at least protect ourselves from it." "And how do we do that?" Miguel asked practically. "We cannot fight the richest man in the county." "Not directly," Zelda agreed. "But what if we could offer the railroad a better alternative? What if we formed an association of landowners people Blackwell hasn't managed to buy out yet and presented a united front to the railroad company?" Beau looked thoughtful. "It could work. The railroad will go where it's most advantageous both economically and politically. If we could offer them an easier path with fewer individual landowners to negotiate with." "Exactly." Zelda felt a surge of excitement. "Blackwell's strength is in his individual power. Ours could be in numbers." They spent the evening refining the idea, identifying potential allies and mapping out a strategy. By morning, they had the outline of a plan. They would form the Shoshone Valley Association, a coalition of landowners and businesses united against Blackwell's monopolistic practices. The work began immediately. Beau rode to neighboring ranches, while Zelda returned to Cody with carefully worded letters for selected business owners. Miguel used his connections among the Hispanic community to bring more allies to their cause. Progress was slow at first. Fear of Blackwell's retaliation made many hesitant to join openly. But as word spread of the association's purpose, more people found the courage to stand with them. Mrs. Hanson from the general store was one of the first to commit. "I'm tired of living under that man's thumb," she declared. "My husband built this store from nothing. I won't let Blackwell take it without a fight." Within 2 weeks, they had gathered nearly 20 members, a mixture of small ranchers, shop owners, and craftsmen. Each had their own story of Blackwell's manipulations, and each brought their own resources to the association. As news of their organization spread, it inevitably reached Blackwell himself. His response was swift and predictable. Increased pressure on association members, threats of economic reprisals, and a renewed offer to buy Beau's ranch, this time at 3 times its market value. "He's worried," Beau observed when the latest letter arrived. "He knows we've found his weakness." The confrontation they had been expecting came on a cold December evening. Zelda was alone in the house, preparing supper while Beau and the others finished the day's work in the barns, when she heard the sound of approaching horses. Through the window, she saw Vernon Blackwell himself dismounting in the yard, accompanied by 6 men, including Parker. This was not a social call. Zelda moved quickly, Retrieving the shotgun Beau kept above the fireplace and stepping onto the porch just as Blackwell reached the steps. "Good evening, Miss Kincaid," he said, tipping his hat with exaggerated politeness. "I was hoping to speak with Mr. Abernathy." "He's in the barn," she replied, keeping the shotgun visible but not directly pointed at anyone. "I can call for him if you'd like." Blackwell smiled thinly. "That won't be necessary. Perhaps you and I can have a civilized conversation first. I'm listening. I understand you've been instrumental in forming this association I've been hearing about." He spoke the word with disdain. "A charming effort, but ultimately futile. I control the banks that finance most businesses in this region. I own the warehouses where goods are stored, the freight companies that transport them, even the newspapers that might report on your activities. And yet here we are," Zelda replied calmly, "growing stronger every day." Blackwell's smile tightened. "Let me be frank, Miss Kincaid. This resistance cannot succeed. Those who oppose me inevitably regret it. I'm offering you personally a chance to avoid that outcome." "How generous. What exactly are you proposing?" "Leave. Take the considerable sum I've offered Abernathy for this property and go elsewhere. Start a new life, free from the taint of your father's accusations." He studied her with calculating eyes. "You're a striking woman, Miss Kincaid. Too intelligent to be wasting your life on a struggling ranch in Wyoming territory. With the money I'm offering, you could go to San Francisco, Denver, even back east. Find a suitable husband, live in comfort." The insulting assumption that she could be bought, that she would abandon Beau and everything they were building, made Zelda's blood boil. But she kept her voice steady. "Mr. Blackwell, I'm afraid you've misunderstood the situation. This is my home. These people are my family. And I don't respond well to threats, veiled or otherwise." Before Blackwell could reply, the barn door opened, and Beau emerged, followed by Miguel and the Wilson brothers. All were armed. "Blackwell," Beau acknowledged coldly as he came to stand beside Zelda on the porch. "This is unexpected." "I was just explaining to Miss Kincaid why this foolish association of yours is doomed to failure," Blackwell replied, his confidence seemingly unshaken by the arrival of armed men. "Perhaps you'll be more reasonable." "I doubt it," Beau said. "But go ahead." Blackwell sighed, as if dealing with particularly slow students. "Very well. The railroad is coming. This your land will be essential to their operations. I intend to control that development as I control everything else of value in this region. You can profit from this inevitability or you can be crushed by it. The choice is yours." "And if we choose to work directly with the railroad ourselves?" Zelda asked. Through our association, for the first time, Blackwell's composure slipped slightly. "The railroad deals with men of substance, not ragtag coalitions of failing businesses. They need a single point of contact, someone who can guarantee delivery on promises made." "Someone like you," Beau said flatly. "Precisely." Blackwell straightened his already immaculate coat. "I'm giving you one final opportunity. Sell to me, dissolve your association, and walk away wealthy. Refuse, and I will destroy everything you care about." The threat hung in the air like gunsmoke. Zelda felt Beau tense beside her, but was surprised when he laughed, a genuine sound of amusement that seemed to catch Blackwell off guard. "You really don't understand, do you?" Beau shook his head. "This land isn't for sale, not for any price. And our association isn't just about blocking your railroad scheme. It's about ending your control over this entire region." "Bold words from a man who can barely keep his own ranch afloat," Blackwell sneered. "How long do you think you can hold out when no one will buy your horses or sell you supplies? When your ranch hands desert you because I've offered them better wages elsewhere?" "As long as necessary," Beau replied calmly. and we're not as isolated as you think." As if on cue, the sound of more horses approaching drew everyone's attention. Sheriff Mills rode into the yard, accompanied by 3 deputies and, surprisingly, Mr. Holloway from the trading post. "Evening, folks," the sheriff called, surveying the tense scene with practiced eyes. "Everything all right here, Sheriff," Blackwell acknowledged stiffly. "We were just having a business discussion." "With 6 armed men," Mills raised an eyebrow. "Seems like an unusual negotiating tactic." "My men are simply protection. These are dangerous times." The sheriff dismounted, followed by his companions. "Indeed they are. Mr. Holloway here has some interesting information about those dangerous times. Would you like to share it, Samuel?" Holloway cleared his throat nervously. "I've been keeping ledgers of all Mr. Blackwell's transactions through my trading post, including payments to men like Parker there, with notations about what services were being purchased." Blackwell's face darkened. "You fool! You'll regret this betrayal." "I already regret the years I spent helping you intimidate decent folks," Holloway replied with unexpected backbone. "The ledgers show everything: the threats, the sabotage, the bribes." "Enough evidence," Sheriff Mills added, "to warrant an investigation by the territorial authorities." "I've already telegraphed the marshal's office in Cheyenne." For the first time, real uncertainty showed on Blackwell's face. "This is absurd. My ledgers are private business records, which were voluntarily provided by their rightful owner," Mills interrupted. "Mr. Holloway has been a respected businessman in this community for 20 years. His testimony carries considerable weight." Blackwell's composure was crumbling visibly. "Parker," he barked, "we're leaving." As they mounted their horses to depart, Blackwell turned to Beau with naked hatred in his eyes. "This isn't over, Abernathy. One way or another I'll have this land." "No," Beau replied simply. "You won't." They watched in silence as Blackwell and his men rode away. When they had disappeared from sight, Sheriff Mills turned to them with a grim smile. "Holloway came to me yesterday with the ledgers. Seems he's been feeling guilty about his part in Blackwell's schemes for some time. Your association gave him the courage to come forward." "Will it be enough to stop Blackwell?" Zelda asked. "It's a start," Mills replied. "The territorial marshal is already building a case against him for corruption and intimidation, and once word gets out that he's under investigation, others will come forward. Men like Blackwell rely on fear and silence to maintain their power." The events of the next few months seemed to prove the sheriff right. As news of the investigation spread, more people spoke out about Blackwell's methods. The Shoshone Valley Association grew stronger, eventually representing over 30 landowners and businesses. By early spring, when representatives of the railroad company arrived to survey potential routes, they met with the association rather than with Blackwell individually. The coalitions offer fair prices for land rights, coordinated access to water and timber, and community support for the project proved more attractive than dealing with a man under active investigation for corruption. Blackwell's empire began to crumble. The banks called in loans he could no longer leverage. Businesses he had controlled through intimidation broke free of his influence. By April, rumors circulated that he had fled to Colorado to avoid arrest. Life at Abernathy Ranch gradually returned to normal. With Blackwell's threats removed, they focused on their work training horses, tending cattle, preparing for the changes the railroad would bring to their valley. Throughout these tumultuous months, something else had been growing as well: the connection between Beau and Zelda. What had begun as a rescue, then evolved into partnership and friendship, was becoming something deeper. They worked side by side during the day, sharing the satisfaction of hard work well done. In the evenings, they often sat together on the porch, talking about everything and nothing, memories of the past, hopes for the future, small observations about the changing seasons. Zelda found herself noticing things she hadn't before: the way sunlight caught in Beau's hair, revealing strands of silver among the brown, the rare but transformative effect of his full smile, the gentleness of his hands when working with young horses or injured animals. For his part, Beau seemed to be undergoing a transformation. The reserved, sometimes stern man who had purchased her freedom was gradually giving way to someone more open, even occasionally playful. He laughed more easily now, and sometimes she would catch him watching her with an expression that made her heart beat faster. On a mild evening in late April, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the valley in gold and crimson, Zelda finally asked the question that had been on her mind. "Why did you never tell my mother how you felt? During all those years you lived so close to her." Beau was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the distant mountains. "Pride at first. I wanted to establish myself, prove I could provide for her before I approached her again. Then respect for her marriage, misguided as it might have been." He sighed. "And later cowardice, I suppose. Fear that she would reject me, or worse, that she wouldn't but would be trapped by her sense of duty. And when you saw her that last time, 5 years ago, I told her then," he admitted softly. "I told her I had never stopped loving her, that I would take her and you away from Elijah if she wanted. She cried, said in another life we might have been happy together." His voice grew rough with emotion. "But she wouldn't leave. Said she had made vows before God, and that you needed stability, not scandal." Zelda felt tears pricking at her eyes, imagining her mother's sacrifice. "She loved you too, then?" Beau nodded. "She said as much. Her last words to me were to watch over you if anything happened to her. I promised I would, though I had no idea how I might keep that promise. And then my father sold me, and I finally had a way to fulfill my promise to Rose." He turned to look at her directly. "But it's been a long time since that was my only reason for wanting you here, Zelda." The simple statement, spoken in his steady voice, sent a wave of warmth through her. "What other reasons do you have?" Instead of answering with words, Beau reached out and took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. The gesture was tentative, questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. Zelda didn't pull away. Instead, she laced her fingers through his, her heart pounding with a mixture of nervousness and certainty. "I never believed in the curse," she said softly. "But I'm beginning to believe in blessings." Beau's smile was slow and warm. "So am I." The kiss, when it came, felt like the natural conclusion to a journey they had been on since the day he declared, "Then I want this curse." His lips were gentle against hers, the contact brief but full of promise. When they drew apart, Zelda saw in his eyes the same wonder she felt that something so precious could emerge from circumstances so dire. "I think I've been falling in love with you since the day you stood up to Blackwell in that saloon," Beau admitted, his voice husky. "Only since then," Zelda teased, her heart too full for complete seriousness. "I think I started falling for you when you cut the ropes binding my wrists and asked if I could ride." He laughed, the sound full and genuine. "We're a pair, aren't we? Both of us cursed with stubborn hearts." "I wouldn't have it any other way," she replied, leaning in to kiss him again. The spring days lengthened into summer, and with the warmer weather came changes to the valley. Surveyors for the railroad mapped their proposed route, which would pass near enough to the ranch to provide convenient access without disrupting their operations. The association negotiated fair terms for land use, water rights, and timber harvesting, ensuring that the coming development would benefit the community rather than exploit it. As for Beau and Zelda, Their relationship deepened with each passing day. They kept their courtship private at first, not out of shame but from a desire to protect something precious and new. But soon enough, the knowing smiles from Alina and Miguel suggested their secret was anything but. On a perfect July evening, with wildflowers carpeting the valley and the last rays of sunlight gilding the distant peaks, Beau took Zelda riding to a special spot. He wanted to show her a small plateau overlooking the river, where a grove of aspen trees provided shade and seclusion. "I come here to think sometimes," he explained as they dismounted, "when decisions need making or memories need sorting." Zelda understood why he valued the place. The view was magnificent. The entire valley spread below them, the river winding like a silver ribbon through green meadows, the ranch buildings small but distinct in the distance. "It's beautiful," she said, turning to find him watching her rather than the vista. "Zelda," he began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant, "I've been thinking about our future." Her heart skipped a beat. "Have you?" he nodded, taking her hands in his. "I'm not a young man anymore. I've lived most of my life alone, set in my ways. But these past months with you have shown me what I've been missing." "And what's that?" she asked softly, though she thought she knew. "Partnership, joy, the kind of love I thought I'd never find again." He took a deep breath. "I know our beginning was unusual. I bought your freedom, but I never wanted to own you. I want to stand beside you as an equal if you'll have me." Tears blurred Zelda's vision as Beau dropped to one knee, still holding her hands. "Zelda Kincaid, will you marry me? Not because of a promise I made to your mother, but because I love you, your strength, your courage, your kindness, your cursed, beautiful heart." She laughed through her tears at his choice of words. "Yes, Beau Abernathy. Yes, I will marry you, curse and all." The wedding took place in September, when the aspen trees had turned to gold and the valley was at its most beautiful. It was a small ceremony, held on the ranch with only their closest friends in attendance, Miguel and Alina, the Wilson brothers, Sheriff Mills, Mrs. Hanson, and a few other members of the association. Zelda wore a gown of ivory silk that Alina had helped her make, adorned with lace sent by Miguel's daughter in Denver. Beau looked uncommonly handsome in a new suit, his usual reserve giving way to undisguised happiness as he watched his bride approach. The minister, brought from Cody for the occasion, spoke of new beginnings and enduring love. When the time came to exchange vows, Beau's voice was clear and steady. "I, Beau Abernathy, take you, Zelda Kincaid, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love, honor, and cherish you in sickness and in health, in good times and bad, for as long as we both shall live." Where others saw a curse, I found my greatest blessing. Zelda's voice trembled slightly with emotion as she replied, "I, Zelda Kincaid, take you, Beau Abernathy, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love, honor, and cherish you in sickness and in health, in good times and bad, for as long as we both shall live. You gave me freedom when I had none, home when I was lost, and love when I thought myself unworthy. Every day with you is a gift I will never take for granted." As the minister pronounced them husband and wife, as Beau's lips met hers in their first kiss as a married couple, Zelda felt a circle completing from the desperate young woman sold by her father to the confident wife, standing proudly beside the man she loved. The years that followed brought changes both expected and surprising. The railroad came to the Shoshone Valley as planned, bringing with it new opportunities and challenges. The small settlement that grew around the depot was named Liberty Junction, a name proposed by the Shoshone Valley Association to commemorate their successful stand against Vernon Blackwell's attempt to control the region. Blackwell himself never returned to Wyoming territory. News eventually reached them that he had died in Denver, his fortune largely depleted by legal troubles and failed investments. Abernathy Ranch prospered under Beau and Zelda's joint management. His experience and her fresh ideas proved a powerful combination. They expanded their horse breeding program, focusing on bloodlines particularly suited to the demanding conditions of the Western Territories. Within 5 years, the Abernathy brand was known throughout Wyoming and beyond for quality and reliability. In the spring of 1884, their first child was born, a son they named Thomas, after Beau's father. 2 years later, they welcomed a daughter, Rose, named for Zelda's mother. Their family was completed in 1889 with the arrival of another son, William. The curse that Elijah Kincaid had attributed to his daughter never manifested. Instead, the ranch experienced remarkable good fortune, healthy animals, bountiful harvests, and most importantly, the deep happiness of a family built on mutual respect and genuine love. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Beau surprised Zelda with a special gift, a small, leather-bound journal he had kept during the years he had secretly watched over her mother. "I want you to have this," he said, as they sat together on their favorite spot on the plateau overlooking the valley, "to understand how long the path was that led us here." Zelda opened the journal carefully, recognizing the significance of what he was sharing. The entries were sporadic but heartfelt observations about Rose from a distance, hopes for her happiness, and later, concerns as he noticed signs of her unhappiness. The final entry, dated just after his brief reunion with Rose in Cody, read simply, "She is trapped in a life she didn't choose. Her daughter, so like her at that age, deserves better. I failed Rose. I will not fail her child." "You didn't fail her," Zelda said softly, closing the journal. "You loved her faithfully, and you saved me when I needed saving most." Beau smiled, the lines around his eyes deepening with the expression lines earned through years of squinting into western sun, of laughter shared with his family, of a life fully lived. "We saved each other," he corrected gently. "And that's the only magic I believe in, how two people can heal each other's broken places, can build something stronger together than either could alone." From their vantage point, they could see their children playing near the ranch house, their laughter carrying faintly on the breeze. The buildings had expanded over the years, a larger barn, additional corrals, a bunkhouse for the increased number of ranch hands required for their growing operation. Liberty Junction was visible in the distance, its cluster of buildings a testament to the region's development. "Do you ever regret it?" Zelda asked. "Saying you wanted the curse?" Beau laughed, pulling her close against his side. "Every day I thank God for whatever madness possessed me to say those words. They brought me everything I never knew I needed." As the sun began its descent toward the western mountains, painting the valley in gold and shadow, Zelda reflected on the strange, winding path that had brought her here. From a young woman sold by her own father to the mistress of a prosperous ranch, mother to 3 beautiful children, beloved wife of a good man. Who would have thought, she mused, that a curse could turn out to be such a blessing? "I would," Beau replied, his eyes warm with love as they had been on that day 10 years ago when he first declared, "Then I want this curse." And as they made their way down the hill toward home, toward their children, their life together, their future, Zelda knew with absolute certainty that the greatest curse that could befall her now would be to lose any of this precious, hard-won happiness. But she wasn't worried. Some curses, it seemed, were meant to last a lifetime,